You think you know what happened behind the scenes on set? You have no idea. Forget everything you ever heard about a big, glossy movie set where everyone's happy. This is the story of a film nobody wanted, one that was nearly destroyed by studio politics, censorship, lies, betrayals, broken bodies, full-blown feuds, and a final edit that almost never happened. Real people's lives and careers were changed forever in a boiling mix of sexual tension, censorship fights, and a desperate scramble just to keep cameras rolling day after day. By the end, it was a miracle the movie hit the screens at all. If you're here, do yourself a favor. Subscribe now because these true stories will make everything you thought you knew about filmmaking feel like a fairy tale. It all started with a script that Hollywood found too dirty, too girly, and way too risky to ever make money. Eleanor Bergstein finished the Dirty Dancing script in 1985. She'd spent years researching, building the whole thing out of her childhood summers in the Catskills, what should have been a nostalgic American coming-of-age drama. But the first time she pitched it, the big studio suits actually laughed her out of the room. It's a period piece. It's about abortion. It's about Jews. It has dirty dancing. That's how one MGM executive described it, mocking her face to face. The movie was rejected by studio after studio. Paramount, Universal, Fox, Warner, all of them said no. Too much talk of class and forbidden love. And that abortion plot? Absolutely out of bounds for any mainstream release. By the time the rejection count hit 43, producer Linda Gottlieb was ready to burn the script. Nobody cared about small resort towns and end-of-summer romances, and nobody in 1980s Hollywood wanted to gamble on a storyline about unwanted pregnancy or anything that even hinted at sex outside of glamorous fantasy. The only people who would even pick up the phone were at Vestron Pictures, a Connecticut home video company nobody had heard of, because everyone else had already said no. Vestron's only condition: make it for $5 million or less, about a third of any real Hollywood budget. That meant months of cramming the entire cast and crew into one old hotel, sharing bathrooms and meals, living like kids at summer camp, but with none of the fun or time off. It meant sewing costumes, painting leaves green, cutting scenes and stunts, praying for no accidents. They had only weeks to prepare, then 3 manic months to shoot before the weather destroyed their fake summer. Nobody believed in the script's core story. In fact, studio people actually thought it was pornographic, based on dailies and early edits. Executives in suits, most of whom hadn't watched a dance movie their entire careers, looked at the raw footage and assumed it wouldn't just flop, it'd sink the company. Even Canadian customs agents flagged shipments of film reels, thinking the provocative title meant they were shipping actual porn. Advertising sponsors like Clarisil lined up, then bolted the second they found out an abortion plot existed, demanding whole storylines be wrecked or scrubbed. That left the film with almost no ad support and a sense of stink around it before anyone saw a frame. Meanwhile, the censors at the MPAA came down hard. The Motion Picture Association of America objected again and again to the sexual energy in the dance routines. Not the love scenes, not the romantic moments, but the actual dancing, direct pelvic contact, bodies pressed together, hips grinding just the way real mambo dancers did in the early 60s. The MPAA insisted these scenes would force an R rating, keeping younger viewers and their money away. Director Emil Ardolino and choreographer Kenny Ortega found themselves trapped. Either chop out the entire soul of the film or find a loophole. Their workaround was simple but stressful. They shot alternate, clean versions of the key dance scenes, trying to fool censors into thinking these would be in the final cut. When the MPAA figured out the trick, the entire film teetered on the edge of being rejected outright. The fights over these scenes bled into every other part of the production. Nobody, not the director, not the producers, not even the stars, could relax knowing that a single official decision could tank the project. The censor battle even changed how the love scenes got shot. The director kept the most intimate moments in half shadow, drawing attention away from physical contact and letting tension come from emotion, not flesh. The dirtiest energy stayed in the moves, not between the bedsheets. An editing decision that let the film keep its signature threat while barely sneaking under the wire for a PG-13 rating. The same pressure echoed into the film's advertising. None of the official promotions dared hint at the true story about illegal abortion, class, or race. The posters and teasers played the dancing and the romance up, pushing away the darkest and most debated themes out of fear. Even the cast found it surreal, watching the finished product with friends and realizing how much was hidden in plain sight. Test screenings were a disaster. Early audience reactions included comments like, "Burn the negative and collect the insurance," and "It's like somebody put a cow turd on my living room carpet." This was the feedback after months of painful work and endless rewrites. Nerves got so frayed that at one point the studio ordered just 25 film prints for its limited run, a fraction of what any major film would have as a minimum. Executives didn't think it would last a week in theaters. Nobody was prepared for what happened next. At the 11th hour, a preview in Las Vegas got the first real audience, not critics, just regular people on their feet. Word of mouth exploded. When the limited release hit, theaters filled beyond capacity. Dirty Dancing, the movie nobody wanted, stayed in theaters for months. From total failure to a $214 million worldwide phenomenon in weeks, everybody from the head of Vestron to the crew members painting leaves green got their miracle after all. And yet, the cost of that miracle was brutal. The set itself was like a sadistic obstacle course. The $5 million cap Vestron gave meant every single dollar was a fight. Every day was survival. The cast and crew were stacked into a single hotel, Mountain Lake Lodge in Virginia, for weeks on end. No individual trailers, no special treatment, no personal chefs, just 3 meals a day at one long table, with the freezing October wind cutting through the halls. The movie looks like bright July, but the outdoor scenes were shot in November. It was so cold in the water scenes that Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze developed hypothermia, shivering to the point of losing feeling in their limbs. Their lips turned blue, bodies trembling, faces going literally white between takes. Medical staff warned producers not to let the actors stay submerged more than 10 minutes at a time. But the shoot dragged on, some sessions stretching past reasonable limits, with blankets, heaters, medics hovering just off camera. All dialogue had to be timed so the actor's breath wouldn't show up as fog in hot July scenes, even as the set temperature dropped to near freezing. Every morning the art department was up before dawn, spray painting dead brown leaves fluorescent green to hide the changing season, hastily draping picnic blankets to hide the dying grass. The actors' costumes, summer shirts and skimpy dancewear, offered no protection. Crew members wore heavy jackets and gloved hands. In some lake scenes, what looks like a romantic glide is actually Jennifer Grey's teeth chattering so hard she sometimes couldn't speak. It didn't get easier indoors. The iconic dance montage was shot in a non-air-conditioned building during a freak heat wave. Temperatures inside soared to over 120 degrees. Dancers fainted from dehydration. Crew members staggered outside, makeup running, sweat soaking costumes. At least one principal cast member was hospitalized for heat exhaustion during the first week. The heat wave collapsed the production timeline, pushing the already tight filming schedule into the autumn cold, and screwing up any hope of comfort for the cast. In a matter of days, the crew went from risking heat stroke to fighting off frostbite, and the entire shoot spanned less than 45 days. And the physical pain didn't stop there. Patrick Swayze, who'd pushed his luck for years as a professional dancer, started the shoot with a knee already battered from a lifetime of jumps, spins, and falls. Every single day, he endured medical drainage of his left knee, stuffed it with ice, and took prescription painkillers just to limp back to the dance floor. He insisted on doing his own stunts, like balancing on a log over the lake. Not surprisingly, he fell, again and again. His knee swelled so badly that sometimes it literally doubled in size, but he kept coming back. Between takes, he'd stagger off to the doctors for another round of drainage, then put on a show for the camera. Every lift, every jump, every slow-motion embrace was paid for with real agony. Jennifer Grey, meanwhile, was not a trained dancer, and she took most of the falls and missteps unprotected and unprepared, earning real bruises and battered feet that had to be hidden with makeup. She put in 6 hours or more of dance training a day. Her body was often covered in bruises. Those famous scenes of frustration and defeat on camera were absolutely real. She spent nights crying in her room, terrified she was ruining the film. Choreographer Kenny Ortega pushed her until she broke, because he knew only the most raw exhaustion and emotion would work. Director Emile Ardolino dragged her and Patrick into water for the famous lift over and over, sometimes until neither one could speak. That iconic moment when Baby bursts into tears after failing a dance move for the 20th time? It was filmed as Jennifer Grey literally broke down after 14 hours of non-stop dance, desperate for rest. The injuries added up across the cast. Dancers in the ensemble were swapped mid-production due to injuries from the relentless choreography. The carefully staged group numbers look effortless on camera, but behind the scenes, they were an endless cycle of ice packs, pain meds, and bodies pushed right to the limit. Even the final iconic lift had a hidden cost. Jennifer Grey was so terrified she kept refusing to rehearse the lift, so the team tried it just once, during the actual take. Swayze gritted through the pain, and Grey trusted him enough to leap. One take and only one, caught on film, real shock and disbelief etched on every face. They never tried it again, and the exhaustion afterward was so intense that multiple takes were never an option. If you watched the film and wondered about the tension between the leads, the answer is simple. It was real. Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze clashed from the start. They'd already worked together on Red Dawn in 1984, and the experience left nothing but bad blood. Swayze, all discipline and high professional standards, never broke character for weeks, pushing everyone around him past their comfort zone. Grey had zero interest in putting up with him. She thought he was macho, arrogant, a prankster, while Swayze thought she was a neurotic headcase who cried the moment anyone criticized her, then giggled through important scenes, forcing reshoots. When he was frustrated with her silly moods, she was intimidated by his relentless intensity and his complete lack of fear. The snappish remarks, the stony silences, they weren't acting. Producers Bergstein and Ardolino realized the project was about to fall apart unless there was a breakthrough. Their solution wasn't therapy, it was humiliation. The director and producer forced Grey and Swayze to sit together and watch their original screen tests, over and over, looking for that spark of chemistry they'd shown just once at casting. The idea was that replaying their one moment of connection would snap them out of open hostility and remind them why they were cast. Some days it worked, just barely. They filmed the next scene with renewed energy and believable heat. Then as soon as the camera stopped, they'd go back to ignoring each other completely. The tension bled into the work. Take the famous giggle scene. What looks playful and spontaneous on camera is just sheer exhaustion boiled over. They were shooting at 4 a.m. in a tin building with no heat after an 18-hour day. Patrick was desperate to finish and get sleep. The shot itself should have taken one take, but Jennifer kept giggling uncontrollably every time Patrick's hand grazed her arm. She was ticklish beyond belief and completely unable to stop. Arguing, frustration, growing anger, Patrick's eyes hardened with each failed take. His annoyance and her embarrassment both caught on film. On take 23, the director had had enough. That's the take you see in the film. Real, messy, and forced through by raw nerves. There was nothing easy about the relationship's offset either. The producers made choices that would shape and devastate real lives. Swayze's wife, Lisa Niemi, was originally hired as the film's choreographer because of her dance expertise. But after watching early chemistry tests between Patrick and Jennifer, the powers that be decided Niemi couldn't be objective about Patrick's performances. She was fired and replaced with Kenny Ortega. Insiders said the producers wanted to remove Swayze's real-life wife specifically to intensify sexual tension between the two leads on screen, believing constant speculation of off-screen romance would electrify the movie. The move nearly wrecked Swayze's marriage. Split apart by the long shoot, pestered by tabloids, and left watching strangers manipulate every part of his private life for the sake of a potential hit. This wasn't the only case of ruthless replacements. On the first day, Lynn Lipton arrived to play Baby's mom, but was soon too ill to continue. 2 hours into her second day, she was out, sent home at lunch, and replaced on a few hours' notice. Assistant choreographer Miranda Garrison, who'd been teaching Jennifer and Patrick to dance, got bumped into an acting role just to cover the gap. It was chaos, shift changes, role swaps, downtime among the 200 extras, and actors learning entire scenes on zero notice. Nobody got what they signed up for, and nobody felt secure. Not actors, not crew, not even the hotel owners, who reserved the right to kill the whole production if the movie reflected poorly on their reputation. And all the while, the script that launched 1,000 headaches hung over everyone. The controversial abortion plotline was the heart of the movie. Bergstein refused to drop it, even under relentless pressure from executives. The word abortion was never actually spoken out loud, but no one could miss the implication. All promotional materials and advanced stories hid this central tension, hoping nobody would notice until after opening weekend. That gamble almost ended in disaster. Test audiences and studio bosses left screenings deeply uncomfortable. The whole movie teetered on the edge of being cut completely or buried forever on a stack of unwanted VHS cassettes. Instead, the most unlikely thing happened. The emotional rawness, the pain, the fear, the barely contained anger, humiliation, and joy, all those off-camera battles bled through onto every reel. Ordinary moviegoers, grandmothers, teenagers, whole families fell in love with something real and strange and flawed. The soundtrack, assembled with desperation and on a tiny budget, exploded into a worldwide hit, selling tens of millions of copies, fueling dance halls and wedding parties for decades. The resort that once threatened to block the film's release became an annual tourist draw for dirty dancing weekends and scavenger hunts. Critics might have dismissed the film, but no other American production ever captured that particular high-wire energy of extreme physical pain, psychological warfare, institutional betrayal, and accidental triumph quite the way this one did. So there it is. What you see on screen isn't the story. The real story is backstage, in the freezing water and stifling heat, in the bruises and giggles, the producer's panic, the studio's fear, the barely avoided disaster at every turn. Dirty Dancing only exists because a small army suffered for it, sometimes together, often alone, and nobody, not even its biggest fans, will ever see it quite the same way again.